a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. We are on the first Thursday in March. And as we march forward into this year, on the first Thursday of every month, we like to march with none other than Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed. You can hear Matt Monday through Friday, 4 to 6, on the Drive Time Show at WMNH 95.3, Manchester, New Hampshire, or you can go to mattconnarton.com or ipmnation.com. Tune in online. Whichever way you do, you can chat with Matt, chat with the guest, and see what Matt is being crazy about today. But this day, it's our day to get crazy with Matt. And if you would like to be part of this conversation, you can do so at 202-570-7057. So, speaking of crazy, Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Well, trying to decide, did we miss summer altogether? Did we go from spring to fall? Did winter come back in? Maybe we had a day of summer. I don't know. I'm so confused. I don't know what season it is anymore. Do you?
Well, to me, it's spring because when I was a kid, my dad told me that he's always thought of winter as really only being 2 months, January and February, because most of December is still fall, and you don't really get to the really harsh weather typically until January anyway. So then you've got January and February to contend with, and once you get to March, even if it's every bit as miserable as February was, you don't care, because you're in the home stretch and any day it's going to start to warm up. And so to him, March 1st is the first day of spring, and I've adapted that, and I also regard March 1st as the first day of spring. So it is spring as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and from your lips to the ears of the goddess is all I have to say. So I bet you've been having some lively talk shows with everything going on both in the country and in the world today. So I'd like to dive right in and find out what have been the hot topics.
Well, Russia and Ukraine has been the big thing. That's really dominated my show lately. It's what I've been paying the most attention to, certainly. But I've always been fascinated by anything Cold War related. And I would argue that the Cold War never actually ended, and I think recent events would bolster that position, despite what Barack Obama said to Mitt Romney in that 2012 debate. So, that's really been...
Remind us all, what did Barack say? I don't remember 212 this afternoon, let alone 2012 debate.
Sure.
What did he say? The Cold War's over?
Well, he sort of, yeah. Romney had taken some guff, and I didn't vote for either one of them, actually, but although I preferred Obama to the two, I voted, of the two, I voted third party. But Romney had said in an interview that he regarded Russia as being our greatest geopolitical foe, and some in the media kind of took that and twisted it a little bit, and they kept repeating it and making fun of Romney, more often than not eliminating the keyword geopolitical from what Romney said and saying, oh, Mitt Romney thinks Russia is our greatest foe. Doesn't he know about terrorism and Al-Qaeda and all of that? And Obama, during one of their debates, in fact, it was the sit-down debate where they're at a table, at a desk, Obama said something like he tried to be hip with it. He said something about the 1980s called and it wants its foreign policy back. Basically saying Russia's not a threat. and you're living in this Cold War delusion that is long dead. And I remember at the time thinking, no, that's not. I mean, I was no big fan of Mitt Romney, but I didn't think that was fair, and I thought Obama looked bad in that moment. And I think that moment does not age well, particularly in looking at the current circumstance that we're in.
Well, that would be true. True that. So,
yes.
Tell me about give us the Matt Connarton spin on what's going on there. What do you think is going to, and where do you think it's headed?
Well, I was surprised, as I think a lot of people were, that Putin did in fact decide to invade Ukraine. The general consensus on my show, among myself and my regulars who joined the program and callers, the general consensus was that Putin was not going to invade, that this was a scare tactic, that he was rattling a saber, that he was, using this to intimidate the West into something that, into agreeing to something that he should have known was a non-starter, and, which was, of course, this idea that we would agree that Ukraine would never be a part of NATO. Of course, we cannot allow Putin to dictate that. But so, I think I remember at one point saying I thought there was maybe a 30% chance that he was going to invade. But sure enough, he invaded. I mean, John Hopwood in particular, John, he was quite vociferous in his skepticism that there was any chance that Putin was going to invade, and then he did. So, but I will say this is going spectacularly poorly for Putin. Clearly, he thought that this was going to be a lot easier than it has been. And I have to ask you, what is that sound? What am I hearing?
You are. I will mute while you're speaking. You're hearing the crunch of snow. I'm out walking in the woods as I.
Oh, okay.
But for some reason, it's crunchier than usual.
Yeah, I thought you were eating potato chips or something. I didn't know what was going on. Okay. Anyway, so oh geez, what was I saying? So this is going so poorly for Putin that I'm optimistic that, not that he's going to withdraw. I mean, that would be the best thing, right? But because one of the things that people are very worried about, in addition to the threats of some sort of a nuclear exchange, is that he's not going to stop here, that he's going to keep going. I know there was talk today about, maybe Moldova. Of course, if he, or worse, if he decided to try to go into Poland, which is NATO, and that would trigger Article 5. I don't think any of that's going to happen, and I don't think he's going to try to invade any further than Ukraine, not because I think that he doesn't have the ambition to want to do that, but simply because he's just not going to be able to. He literally is not going to be able to, because he is so bogged down now in Ukraine. He so underestimated the Ukrainians. He so thought that this was going to be so simple, and he probably had intended for something like, I'm assuming, nobody really knows what's going on in his head, but he probably thought that, he was going to perhaps annex all of Ukraine and it would be a part of Russia, or, he was maybe going to allow Ukraine to continue to be a sovereign nation, at least on paper, but he would install a puppet government and Ukraine would be a client state of Russia. So he would, basically be maintaining control. He probably had something like that in mind. He probably thought, the Russian military is going to roll in. There's such a strong Russian separatist movement in Ukraine. A lot of people will be happy to see the Russians come in and take over. It should be fairly simple. They're going to have to fight the Ukrainian military, but they'll be able to crush them pretty easily and then just take over and everything will be great. Instead, what has happened, of course, is this looks kind of like when the Soviet Union was in Afghanistan. You know, I was listening to an interview with retired General Barry McCaffrey last night, who was saying Putin's stuck there now. I mean, literally, these tanks are now getting stuck in the mud. But Putin is stuck. He is stuck in Ukraine. He's going to be stuck there for the next decade. While the Russian economy is being strangled to death, he's got to try to fight this war in Ukraine. And it's not going to end. The Ukrainians are not going to surrender. And, you know, yeah, the Russian military will eventually, probably in the next couple of days, will overwhelm the Ukrainians to the point where Russia can honestly say that they've taken the country. But there's a difference between taking it and holding it. And they're not going to be able to hold it in the sense that every day, they're going to have to fight the Ukrainians who are not going to quit, who are not going to surrender. And they're amazing. I have so much respect for the Ukrainians. And in these cities, you know, they're going to be engaging in urban warfare every day, trying to hold these cities, and it's going to be extraordinarily difficult. It's going to be a long, hard slog. Putin is committed to this now for the rest of his life. He's almost 70 years old in a country where the average age, I believe, the average life expectancy for males is only 72. So for the rest of his life now, Vladimir Putin is stuck with this mess that he's made in Ukraine. And for what? And he's not going to be able to go anywhere else. He's not going to be in a position to invade anybody else. He can't even get this right, and he's going to spend the rest of his life trying to fix it and failing. And I'm happy to see him fail. So that's what I think. So I'm a little bit optimistic in that regard that you know, he's not going to be able to do anything more than this.
So the Ukrainians have asked for a hurried entrance into NATO. Just not going to happen because if that happens, then NATO would have to release forces.
Right. Yeah. That won't happen. Yeah. They can't. You can't bring them into NATO while they're being occupied by Russia. So no, that's off the table. And by the way, I appreciate that the Biden administration, who I think has played this pretty well, I'm glad that they're holding the line and not caving into the pressure. There is some pressure, speaking of NATO, for the administration and for NATO to get involved and put up a no-fly zone over Ukraine, which I think would be crazy to do, because if you put up a no-fly zone that you then have to enforce, then you're in the position of maybe having to shoot down a Russian plane. And once you've shot down a Russian plane, then you're directly involved. Then you're directly in conflict with Russia militarily, and that cannot ever be allowed to happen, because that would escalate into something that would be very bad for all of us. So I'm glad that they're holding the line and resisting that, and not wanting to get us in that position. Zelensky, who I have tremendous respect and admiration for, the guy's a hero as far as I'm concerned. But one thing I do disagree with him on is, you know, he would like to see a no-fly zone. I understand from his position, he desperately wants whatever it's going to take to save his country, but that's not it, because that's gonna screw over all of us. I mean, that's an act of war, just declaring. I mean, by some people's standards, and certainly by the standard of Vladimir Putin, I'm sure, just declaring a no-fly zone would be considered an act of war, and we cannot go to war with Russia.
So oftentimes, if people are sensing a weakness at home, they choose a war as a way to try to shore up their forces, to get it to be patriotic, to get behind. Do you think that Putin was struggling more than we realized, that the dissension, because, you know, how accurate information do we get outside of Russia? Though the from everything I'm seeing, and who knows, the dissension of him being in the Ukraine, he's feeling pressure now from inside of Russia as well.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if it affects him. I mean, Michael McFaul, who was ambassador to Russia for a couple of years during the Obama administration, has said that, he dealt with Putin. He knows him a little bit. And he seems to think that Putin really doesn't care. He doesn't care particularly, or at least he went into this not caring about the economy of Russia, not caring about sanctions, not caring about any of it, being willing to take the hits because he had a grander goal in mind, which is to, in some form or fashion, reconstitute the Soviet Union and return Mother Russia to its former greatness. And that Putin isn't concerned about the short-term economy. He's concerned in the long term about how he will be remembered in history, how he will be talked about in history books in Russia. That is what he is concerned with. So having said that, because this has gone so badly, and because the Russian economy, this is another thing that's so interesting to me. People thought, these sanctions and everything that we're doing are going to take years to have an effect on the Russian economy to the point that it's anything more than just, negligible. But in fact, with incredible speed, the Russian economy is imploding. The ruble is virtually worthless, and it's happening so fast. So my hope is, what I'd like to see happen is, things get so bad that somebody, and I know he's very isolated, but somebody, maybe one of these generals, maybe one of these oligarchs, maybe the oligarch he humiliated recently in public, one of these guys just gets fed up with how badly things are going and says, the hell with how you're remembered in history, and decides to put a bullet in the back of the guy's head. And I think it's possible that something like that will happen. And I hope there's a cell phone video of it so we can all see it. But I hear the music.
Yes, well, we'll be right back with bloodthirsty Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
So I need to correct something right off the bat. Ukraine was asking for entrance into the European Union, not NATO. I misspoke. I just want to put that corrected piece of information out there. But I think that the discussion of assassination and assassinating plots are already happening in Russia.
I hope so.
Because, now they've put out, they're going after these oligarchs, and they're going after their families. Like, they're not going to be able to go, they're not going to be able to come west. They're not going to be able to go to Western schools. I mean, the list is out, the name is out. They're targeting it, knowing that sooner or later, one of them's going to pop. And so I do think that this stranglehold, the question is, can it happen in time that if Putin gets assassinated, will Russia then have an excuse to pull back? Okay, we're walking away from this. We just, and I'm sure somewhere they're going to try to say that, oh, it was a Ukrainian, or it was from the U.S., or, unless they're caught red-handed, they're not ever going to show up that they murdered their own. They'll turn him into some kind of hero, but the war will stop. So that is a best-case scenario.
Yeah. Love to see it.
Well, I'm with you. I mean, I would like the man to have his just reward, and I think a bullet in the back of the head sounds like one of them to me.
Yes.
I mean, he's bringing suffering to millions of people for his own ego in Russia, and I know that's nothing new, but he's taken it to a whole new level. Plus, committing atrocities.
Yeah.
Is some of the stuff what he's using to go against Ukraine. And of course, they're getting all this defense stuff shipped in from Germany and all these other countries. But at the end of the day, the big hole I think that they're going to need to sew up is they can't get the largest purveyor of cryptocurrency to shut off the Russia flow. And I suspect that Putin probably has wealth hip deep in that format because they're saying, no, the whole thing about crypto is it doesn't give in to the world markets and the world pressures. So,
yeah, from what I understand, nobody really knows how much money Putin has. I'm sure he's got a lot of it hidden away somewhere. Which is probably why, like I said, he doesn't necessarily care. He certainly doesn't care about other people suffering, so he doesn't care about the Russian people suffering economically. But yeah. Hopefully somebody takes him out. And I mean and maybe that fear. He's notoriously paranoid, which is why he's so worried about NATO all the time, even though NATO is not a direct threat to him. But maybe he'll get paranoid enough that he wants to change course in Ukraine because he starts to worry that that an oligarch is going to take him out.
Who knows? He would have a very hard time saving face right now if he pulled out of the war. I mean, there's no way if he pulls out of the war that he can flip this as anything other than a disaster.
Oh yeah, he's got no good options. I mean, it's stunning. It's stunning how badly he's blown this and the problem he's created for himself. You're right. He has no good options. He cannot save face. The only thing I can think of is if somebody figures out a way to offer him some sort of off-ramp where he can, declare victory and leave, to use the expression, by claiming he got something from the West, maybe maybe we take out nuclear missiles from somewhere that we have them, kind of similar to what we did in the Cuban Missile Crisis, where, we said, okay, we're going to take out these missiles that are, we were going to be taking out anyway, but we'll take them out sooner. And you can tell Khrushchev, you can tell the Russian people that you got something from us and whatever, and that's fine. But I don't know. It's just incredible, the situation that he's gotten himself into. The incompetence of it is shocking. It would, if it wasn't so tragic, it would be funny.
Yep. Well, and with all the losers that is happening, all the losers, the Ukrainian people, the Russian people, Putin really looks like a big old loser in this, no matter how many times he spins it. And we have the big winners, which are looking like to be China.
Yeah.
They're going to leverage this. I read somewhere that they asked him not to go into the Ukraine until after the Olympics because it would be disruptive.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
Any truth, do you think?
I think it's probably true. Yeah. I mean, we've always been worried about how cozy Russia and China get and continue to get. But I don't think they necessarily approve of this. The Chinese are pragmatic, and they're, it's funny. I recall people wondering, when Putin first began this, if the Chinese would use this as a blueprint for when they decide to move on Taiwan. But now they might be having some second thoughts when they look at how badly Putin has screwed this up.
So let's move a little closer to home, because there's also been some stuff that's going on in the news around here. So let's start with the easy to get disgusted over, the Republicans who are still riding Trump's coattails and trying to make Ukraine look like the bad guy and Putin the hero. That number is falling, but you still have some. What are your thoughts? Yeah. The thing about that, I was discussing that very thing today on my show. The pro-Russia, pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party, I do think it is shrinking, but it certainly does exist. And, partly because you've got people like Tucker Carlson, the most popular person on Fox, who speaks to millions of people every night, who's taken that pro-Russia, pro-Putin stance, saying things like, why should we be bothered by Vladimir Putin and things like that. I know I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene had attended an event where they were actually chanting Putin's name. And, a lot of people, the thing that people, I think, get wrong about that, though, is because people have short memories for some of these things. People think that is attributable specifically to Trump, because Trump was cozy with Putin, and he certainly was. Trump is standing next to Putin at a podium in Helsinki and actually siding with Putin against our own American intelligence agencies in front of the whole world. And we know there was going to be at one point possibly a Trump Tower in Moscow and, all this stuff. But that actually predates Trump. None of that started with Trump. Trump was an accelerant, and Trump benefited from it. But I gave an example on my show today that I think people forget. In 2014, when Putin decided to take Crimea, the peninsula, immediately, and I was gobsmacked at the time, immediately there were Republicans in the media praising Putin. And this was in 2014. This was before anyone knew Trump was going to be running in 2016. And they were doing it because Putin suddenly making that move, he had political utility to them.
because they were praising Putin, saying, look, he's a decisive leader, unlike our president, Barack Obama, who's weak and feckless. But Putin, he decides what he wants and he goes for it. I remember how disgusted I was by this, but by watching these Republicans, the party of Ronald Reagan, who had to be spinning in his grave over this happening. But here are these Republicans, and I remember one specific one, Rudy Giuliani. I remember seeing Rudy Giuliani on Fox News gushing, absolutely gushing over Vladimir Putin, saying things like, oh, he's a decisive and strong leader. Unlike our president Putin, he's strong, he's decisive, he's dynamic, he's forceful, he goes for what he wants, and that's something to admire. I mean, but that became the narrative among Republicans. Look at how great Putin is, you know, and so this whole thing, you know, and of course Republicans, a lot of them, they embrace authoritarianism, but this whole thing actually predates Trump, and I do think that the current situation has really dampened a lot of that, and I think for some of these people, they've probably, you know, sort of snapped out of that and said, well, maybe I shouldn't be pro-Putin after all. And Putin's always been a bad guy. I mean, obviously, you know, this is terrible what's happening now, but Putin has killed a lot of people and done a lot of terrible things. You know, Biden tells that story about when he was vice president and he met Vladimir Putin, and he said to Putin, I don't think you have a soul. And Putin replied, well, I think you and I understand each other. So, yeah, but hopefully that wing of the Republican Party that is pro-Putin and pro-Russia will continue to shrink. I hope so.
So, well, you know, at that rally, and of course, two people got censured because they were attending, which surprised me that actually McCarthy did it, but he censored two of his own people for attending what was clearly a racist supremacist thing. But they had the Russian flag with Trump's name on it that they were waving.
Yeah, it's so disgusting. It's unreal. It's just unreal.
So, I think our big bargaining chip is we tell the Russian people, leave Ukraine, we'll give you Trump. There, we gave him something. We'll be happy to get rid of him, and you know.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So the January 6th committee continues to heat up, and now they're starting talking about laying a game plan for criminal charges that include Trump. What do you think about all of that?
Well, I'd love to see it. You know, I always say, though, they better hurry. I mean, I'm sure they know that, obviously, and I'm sure they're working as quickly as possible, you know, because once the midterms happen and Republicans are back in charge, that committee goes away immediately. But, yeah, I think it's great. I love the idea of, I think Trump would look very nice in orange, in an orange jumpsuit. It would match his skin. Well,
there's this case that they're laying out, and it's like you're watching the news get smaller and smaller. Trump, I don't see in any form of reality how Trump is going to escape all of these charges and all of these things that are coming at him in time to become president. I guess. I mean, like, that's his goal. If I become president, then I have 4 more years of immunity, and then the guy's in his 80s.
Yeah.
Not that stops people from getting thrown in prison. But I just don't see prison waiting that long for him. And of course,
right.
all they have to do is have enough of all of the foundational stuff done to pass it on to the Justice Department, because they can't, I mean, Congress can't file criminal charges.
Right. Yes. Yeah, so if they get enough of this done to give to the Justice Department, then the midterms don't affect what the Justice Department does as long as the Biden administration is still in charge. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a way, the fingerprints that I'm seeing over all of this is the fingerprints of, we know if we lose, that if the House goes Republican, this committee becomes useless. And that's why so much of their stuff is now coming out in ways where they're clearly, if midterm elections happen and they lose the House of Representatives, and I still don't know that it's a done deal. And I think that if somehow between now and then we could actually show that everything we did drove the Russians back out of Ukraine, even if it was because there was a bullet in the back of Putin's head, and you have a lot of Republicans on tape that were praising Putin even after the invasion started, and some of those are up for re-elections, and there's going to be some parts of the country that are not going to look kindly on them, even if they're Republicans. You know, it's going to be what's going to get tinged. So I don't think it's as a done deal as everybody wants to make it. I still think there's a fight in the air, and some of how this Ukrainian thing, which some people say, oh, this was a gift from Putin to Trump because it will get the Republicans back in charge. But that would have been if Putin actually did have a quick victory and won. But this prolonged falling apart of everything could bite. I don't know. I think that it could bite. There was how many Republicans? I'm trying to remember that voted against solidarity with Ukraine. They just did that vote on the House of Representatives about doing that, and I think there was something like 9 Republicans. I may not even been that high. It was a small number. It was less than 10. I don't know if I can remember, but there was still a small number that was like would not vote that we should support the democracy of Ukraine. Now, so I don't know. I think this could take some people down. And we're getting ready to go on break, and then we'll come back and see what else Matt is going to teach us about what's going on in the world today.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Vox Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Join me every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio for Vox Novus, the new voice.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. I'm here this week with Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed, as I am the first Thursday of every month. Pretty much every now and then Matt needs to change it to the second Thursday, but for the most part, if you're here on the first Thursday of the month, you're going to find me and Matt chatting about what's going on in the world. And if you want to be part of that conversation, you can call in at 202-570-7057. That's 202-570-7057. If you'd like to get more Matt Connarton than once a month, you can, between 4 and 6 Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, go to mattconnarton.com or ipmnation.com, and you can tune in to his show on WMNH 95.3 out of Manchester, New Hampshire. You can listen to it on the radio if you're close enough, or you can listen to it through the internet. In either way case, you can be chatting up Matt and become one of his regulars, because Matt has his own oligarchs, don't you, Matt?
My own what?
Oligarchs.
Oligarchs? I wish I did. That'd be great.
Yeah, people who made billions of money off of you.
Yes, and they would do my bidding.
Yes. So, anyways, so it sounds like, and if I'm misinterpreting this, tell this to me. It feels like you're losing some energy around that January 6th committee.
Oh no, I'm just always worried that they're going to run out of time. But no, not at all. I mean, I will admit I haven't been as focused on it as I had been, because I've been consumed with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, I really have been. But no, I mean, I'm excited to see what happens, and I would love to see Trump in prison. So no, I'm still there. I'm still with that. Absolutely.
Okay, I was just kind of checking in, because that's part of the case that was made, was that Putin timed this in one way to take the coverage away, to derail, because he would love to have Trump back in office, because who doesn't want their lapdog in office? That's what he's trying to do in the Ukraine. If he takes over the Ukraine, he'll have a puppet government there, and for all intents and purposes, for 4 years, if Trump got back in office, he'd have a puppet government here. I mean, he'd be a happy camper.
Well, I suppose it has helped Trump in that way, because it has taken some of the, this new story today coming out of the January 6th committee about possible criminal charges coming. That's not getting nearly as much play as it would normally be. Because of Ukraine, so I suppose Putin has helped him in that sense.
Yeah, the thing is, it could have a counter effect. Well, first of all, if we all have our wishes come true, and he does the Julius Caesar face plant. It's an interesting way to describe it, right?
Yes.
Then that may not help so much. But actually, they're releasing this stuff out. And, of course, Fox and everybody and all of the, Trumpettes all dive on anything it does and screams and hollers and stuff like that. Well, that's getting less airplay as well, because they're staying focused on Ukraine. So they may slip several things out before they go, hey, wait a second. They've got that noose way too close to, our savior's throat. So it's interesting to see how it plays out, because I specifically have been, obviously, every day I check to see what's going on in Ukraine. I know people in Ukraine. My heart and energy is with them. I would love to see this thing get turned around. But I don't let it take my eye off the ball that we got to get laws passed so that this can't happen, even try to happen again, what Trump tried to do, and that something sticks to Trump enough to make sure he can't run. But I also think it backfired on him somewhat. Of course, Tom Cotton was asked directly, I believe it was Tom Cotton, was, do you support Trump's, supporting Putin and saying Putin's, a great guy and this is brilliant. And he's like, I can't speak for another politician. And he was asked like 3 times, as I told you, I'm not going to speak for another politician. He said, well, you were happy to speak for another politician, about another politician when this, and this happened. What has changed? And basically the interview was over. Did you come across that in your stuff?
I didn't see the Tom Cotton. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Yes, I'm sorry. I was confused about. Yes, Tom Cotton. I did see that actually. Yeah. Yes. Well, another profile in courage, Tom Cotton.
Yeah. So, Trump continues to do his damaging on the thing. And if something happens and Russia gets to declare victory, even if it's in name only, because like you said, they're going to be mired down in this for decades, or if Putin face plants and they pull back, he's not going to be able to help himself. He's going to be out there saying, oh, the world has lost a great man. He'll probably say, somebody I call my friend, right? I mean, can't you see Trump just like tightening that of his own noose tighter as Mitch is going, yeah, that guy's never going to hit the White House again. I'll make sure.
No, see, I that part I disagree with. I don't think Trump would because once Putin was of no use to him, I don't think Trump would bother. I actually don't think he would. I don't think he would bother.
But if Putin declares a victory, he'll go on and praise him.
Oh, right, yeah, but not if something bad happens to him. He won't. No.
Yeah. So I'm still thinking that the greatest hope we have of not losing the Senate and the House to the Republicans is Trump's inability to keep his mouth shut. That still may be the secret weapon.
Yeah, I think the momentum though is historically, whichever party doesn't hold the White House picks up seats in the House, and it just seems like so many people are. I talk about this a lot on the show. I'm frustrated by it. So many people are blaming things like inflation on President Biden, even though I don't believe it's even remotely his fault. But and the economy actually overall is booming, which is part of what contributes to inflation. When you have an overheating economy, the economy is actually expanding too quickly. But but everyone always wants. I mean, Americans, I think, are very, everybody wants daddy to fix everything. Yeah. And people tend to hold the chief executive responsible for however well or poorly the economy is doing. And I think it's a very reductive way of looking at economics, but that's how Americans look at it. And even though the economy is doing well, inflation is ridiculously high, so they just blame that on Biden, and that's why his approval rating is so low. And I think it's a shame because I think that's and I've had my own criticisms of President Biden, but not things that I think are just patently unfair. I mean, if anybody can have any control over inflation, not even control, but influence, it's the Fed, using monetary policy and manipulating interest rates to try to control that. But there's nothing Biden can do about it. There's nothing the president can do. But people blame him. It's silly to me.
State of the Union. Did you watch it?
Not all of it. I haven't had a chance to watch all of it. I have to watch it for the show, obviously, but I have a hard time sitting through those. They're just very long. It wasn't even that long. It was only an hour, but plus Biden kind of makes me a little drowsy sometimes. I will say, though, what I have watched of it, I think he did very well. And I saw the ending, and, presidents always try to end the State of the Union on a very positive, optimistic, on a high note. But Biden, I think, was particularly effective at that Tuesday night. That was really a rousing ending, and I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, when you separate out the inflation, all of his other numbers of what's happened in this country since he's taken office have actually been better than what Trump had. That's what I've been exposed to. Yeah, he's beaten Trump across the board on almost everything. But inflation's the other side of the coin. So we'll see. I know I chuckle every time you roll that out. I say, when I ask this question, it pushes the button, and Matt says, historically, there's always this blah, blah, blah. And then I always tend to go, yes, but there have been exceptions, and there were exceptions here, and there was exceptions here, and there was exceptions here. So exceptions do happen, and yes. God knows with what's going on, everything's been thrown in the crucible. I wouldn't count on what has happened as what's going to be at this point. I think it's all been thrown into the crucible, and we still have some very interesting times in front of us.
I agree.
So, what do you think of the Supreme Court nominee? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Had a chance to look?
Haven't had much of a chance to look, but thumbs up so far. And, I agreed with the president deciding when he pledged at that debate in South Carolina that he would appoint a black female to the Supreme Court. I thought that was great. I still think it's great. And I have yet to see or hear anything negative. Obviously there's some Republicans who will find an excuse not to support her, but no, she seems like a good pick to me. Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, I think she is who, maybe it was Michelle Childs. I'm not sure about that. I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think that she is who James Clyburn had suggested, but I'm not sure if it was her. So no, I'm not positive.
I think it was Michelle Childs, and I think that's the one that also, Humpty Dumpty trumped to the mini-me. Lindsey Graham. I knew I'd think of his name.
Oh, right. Yes, Lindsey Graham was very supportive. Yeah.
But I think that was Michelle Childs. I think because the one thing I remember about Michelle Childs is she did not go to an Ivy League school. And there was this big thing about, maybe we need somebody who has had more of a real American experience on the Supreme Court instead of people that are more theoretical in their living in America than actual. But this woman has been a public defender, and I think I read somewhere she would be the first public defender that has ever made it to the Supreme Court.
Oh, okay. I think you're right.
There was somebody that made a list of what were the objections that they were going to come up with and checked off her on that list of, they're going to want to say this. Well, but this is the truth. They researched it. And I wished I had actually marked the list out so that I could have shared it, but it was pretty impressive that, like, oh, she hasn't had enough judicial experience on the bench. Well, actually, she had one of the highest levels of actual bench judicial of almost anybody ever elected to the Supreme Court if she gets elected.
Yeah.
Like, she actually, like, they don't choose people that have that kind of actual real American experience for the Supreme Court.
Right.
Why would we sully the hands of the highest court of the land with an average American?
Right.
And we come to the close of another fun time with Matt, Dr. Kevin. Matt, I look forward to seeing you back here in April.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, for coming in and unleashing Matt Connarton here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.